That's not even the shocking part. Faye Emerson died alone in Spain at age 65, far from her Hollywood fame, but that's what her family just confirmed. She tried to kill herself on Christmas Day. There was abuse at the actor's studio, and there was a scandalous wardrobe malfunction that changed TV forever. From Howard Hughes' mysterious gifts to her last days in Spain, we're revealing the painful secrets America's first TV queen took to her grave. Faye Margaret Emerson was born on July 8, 1917, in Elizabeth, Louisiana. Lawrence L. Emerson and his wife Emma had 5 children. Her father worked as a rancher and court stenographer. Her parents' marriage didn't last long, and when Faye was 3, they got divorced. After the divorce, she moved around a lot as a child. In 1924, she lived with her father and stepmother in Chicago, but life kept changing. When she was 10, she moved to San Diego, California, to live with her mother. This gave her some stability, but problems still arose. Faye went to Point Loma High School. Later, her mother sent her to the Academy of San Luis Rey, a Catholic convent boarding school in Oceanside. It was there that she first discovered her love for performing. At the time, it was just an interest, but that spark would change her whole life. After high school, she went to San Diego State College for a year and got involved in local theater. She joined the San Diego Community Theater and the St. James Repertory Theater and performed in stock theater productions. These early performances were small, but they set the tone for the rest of her career. As an actress, it wasn't easy, especially during the Great Depression. She had to struggle financially and work hard to support herself while pursuing her dream. In 1935, she made her stage debut in Russet Mantle. It was a small start, but it was the first step in a career that would soon take her to Hollywood. Faye Emerson's journey to Hollywood began by chance, but it changed the course of her life in 1941 while she was performing in a stock theater production in California. At the time, she was still finding her way as an actress after going to San Diego State College. That one performance led to a contract with Warner Brothers, which was one of the biggest studios at the time. Her early years in Hollywood were spent in small roles in movies like Man-Po-Power and Blues in the Night, both of which came out in 1941. These roles were small, but they gave her experience in front of the camera and a chance to learn what the film industry needed. Brothers, who were always looking for new talent, saw her potential and gave her bigger roles. That same year, she got bigger parts in Bad Men of Missouri and 9 Lives Are Not Enough, which was the start of her rise in the studio system. In 1942, she got her first leading role in Lady Gangster, a crime melodrama and a remake of the 1933 movie Ladies They Talk About, which starred Barbara Stanwyck. Emerson played Dorothy Burden, a bank robber caught during a failed escape and sent to prison. Had to deal with her new life. People in prison and old friends betrayed her, but she was strong and determined to escape. When she found out that her old gang was planning to hurt the men she loved, she broke out of prison dressed as the warden, showing that she was as smart as she was tough. Her performance showed that she could carry a movie as its lead lady. Gangster was a low-budget movie, but it was an important step in her career. The next year, she starred in Howard Hawks' directed one of the most important movies of 1943, Air Force. The movie was based on real events and followed the crew of a Besson bomber named Marianne as they flew dangerous missions in the Pacific during World War I. Air Force was made to boost morale after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Emerson played the wife of co-pilot Bill Williams, adding emotional depth to a story that was mostly about war and action. Even though her role was small, it reminded people of the sacrifices families back home make. The movie, which came out on February 3, 1943, was made with close help from the U.S. Army Air Forces, and even used real planes from Hendricks Army Airfield to make the battle scenes look as real as possible. Critics praised the movie's gripping story, and it became one of Warner Brothers' most successful wartime dramas. For Emerson, it was another step toward bigger roles. In 1944, she gave one of her best performances in The Mask of Demetrios, a film noir directed by Jean Necluseka and based on Eric and Ambler's book. Peter Lorre played a mystery writer who became obsessed with figuring out the life of the mysterious criminal Demetrios Makros. Emerson played Irana Priza, one of Demetrios' former lovers, a woman who had fallen for his charm but had been betrayed and left heartbroken. As a nightclub owner, Iran had seen the darker side of life, and Emerson brought that worldly quality to the character through her body language, which made Irana feel both enticing and deep. Her scenes set in smoky cabaret captured the essence of classic film noir, full of mystery, deception, and moral ambiguity. Even though she had less screen time than Sidney Greenstreet, Peter Lorre, or Zachary Scott, her presence left a lasting impression. Faye Emerson never became as famous as some of her contemporaries, but she built a career on strong, memorable performances. She went from small roles to bigger roles, giving her roles intelligence and depth. Television was still new and untested in Hollywood in the late 1940s, so most movie stars avoided it because they didn't think it could match the glamour of movies. Emerson, on the other hand, had a different view. In 1948, she entered the world of television and quickly became one of its first major stars. She didn't just appear on TV, she embraced it. Her first roles included hosting the show Paris Cavalcade of Fashions, which mixed style and entertainment, and starring in anthology series like the Chevrolet Teletheater and the Philco Television, even though Emerson's programs were still in their early stages. Emerson's confidence and charisma made her stand out. The next year, she took things a step further. In 1949, she started The Faye Emerson Show, which ran on CBS and then BNKS until 1952. It was one of the first late-night talk shows and helped define the format long before Johnny Carson or Steve Allen became famous. Emerson's show wasn't just about interviews with celebrities, it also had cultural discussions and letters from viewers, and unexpected moments that kept viewers interested. For example, in one of the most talked about episodes, Douglas Fairbanks Jr. showed college fencers how to fight with a sword. These moments made the show feel new and unpredictable. Emerson wasn't just reading from a script, she was creating a conversation. Her charm and intelligence won over viewers. Her fashion choices made headlines. She had a signature style of wearing elegant gowns that were often low-cut and always glamorous. Some people thought her outfits were too daring for TV. They also set her apart. In one now famous broadcast, her gown slipped on air, causing a minor scandal and a flurry of gossip in the newspapers. But Emerson never let controversy define her. She carried herself with confidence, showing that TV could be both glamorous and sophisticated. In 1950, only 12 of American households had a TV, according to the census, so her audience was small but influential. The people who watched were usually wealthy and eager to embrace the. Not only was Emerson a host, she was also one of the first real TV stars, which is how she got the nickname First Lady of Television. It wasn't just how often she was on TV, it was what she stood for. Her poise and intelligence set a high standard for hosts, and she didn't shy away from serious topics either. In a 1951 mailbag segment, a viewer criticized her for talking about politics on air, and her response was simple but firm. Politics is she wasn't just a pretty face, she had something to say, and wasn't afraid to say it. Her personality made her a perfect fit for the rise in popularity of game shows in the 1950s. Unlike today's shows, which focus on big prizes, those in the 1950s were all about personal issues. Emerson became a regular panelist on To Tell the Truth and What's My Line, where celebrities tried to guess contestants' strange jobs by asking them clever questions. Emerson was smart and funny, and she didn't just sit there and listen, she took part in the conversation, which made her a fan favorite. These appearances only added to her reputation as one of TV's most versatile stars. In 1951, she took on a new challenge with Faye Emerson's Wonderful Town, a half-hour variety show that aired on CBS until 1952. Instead of filming in a studio, the show took viewers across the country to different cities and their people. When she went to Boston, she learned about the city's rich history. In Minneapolis, she met with Senator Hubert Humphrey and actor Richard Carlson. And some episodes even went outside of the U.S., showing viewers what life was like in Paris and Mexico City. This format was ambitious and expensive, but it gave TV something it had never seen before. Despite its success, the show was hard to keep going because of the high costs of filming on location. But Wonderful Town showed Emerson wasn't afraid to break the rules. In 1960, she was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for her contributions to early television. At the same time, Faye Emerson's Broadway debut in 1948 was more than just another role, it was a turning point. On April 28, she took the stage at the Booth Theater in the play The Thing, a comedy by Fence Millard adapted by P.G.F. Wodehouse. The show ran for 244 performances, which is a clear sign of its success. Emerson starred alongside Louis Calhern, an experienced actor with a strong stage presence. directed the play, which was a light-hearted tale of love deception and theatrical trickery. It followed a playwright's clever attempt to save a young couple's relationship, mixing witty dialogue with classic romantic misunderstandings. For Emerson, this role was a big step from Hollywood to Broadway. In the 1940s, she built a career in movies known for her good looks and sharp wit, but Broadway demanded a different kind of performance. It wasn't just about screen presence, it was also about timing and live performance. Where every second counted, she proved she was more than just a film actress. She had the skills to hold her own on a New York stage. The timing of her debut made it even more important. By 1948, Emerson was a household name for both her work in movies and her famous marriage to Elliott Roosevelt, the son of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Taking to Broadway wasn't just an artistic choice, it was a statement she was making. She was looking for something bigger than the B-movie roles that had shaped most of her early career. The success of the plays opened up new opportunities and showed that she could draw audiences from outside of Hollywood. This set the stage for the next part of her career. Over the next 10 years, she would take on bigger and better theater projects, each one solidifying her status as a serious performer. In 1953, Emerson joined one of her most famous productions, An Evening with William Shakespeare. This wasn't just any play, it was a theatrical event, and to show off the best of Shakespeare's work. It included scenes and monologues that showed off both his comedic and dramatic genius. The production starred some of the best actors of the time, such as Basil Rathbone and Ava Gallien Emerson. Being on stage with them was an accomplishment in itself. Rathbone was already famous for playing Sherlock Holmes, and Gallien was an icon of American theater. It was hard to find performers of this caliber. But Emerson rose to the challenge. She read Shakespeare's words with poise and accuracy, showing that she was more than just a Hollywood star making a short stop in theater. She belonged there. The production had a deeper purpose than just being artistic. It was a fundraiser to help build the Shakespeare Theater in Stratford, Connecticut. Emerson's involvement linked her name to a cause that wanted to keep classical theater alive in America at a time when TV was becoming more popular. She was committing herself to the stage, which made people pay attention. Critics praised her performance, pointing out that she could give Shakespeare's characters depth and energy. She wasn't just reading lines, she made them feel new, showing that she had the range to tackle some of the most difficult material in theater history. Even though TV became the most popular form of entertainment in the 1950s, Emerson stayed committed to live performance and continued to act in regional theater. She kept in touch with audiences outside of Broadway by starring in plays like Goodbye, My Fantasy, and The Vinegar Tree. In Goodbye, My Fantasy, she played a strong-willed congresswoman who was returning to her alma mater. The play, written by Faye Emerson, had been made into a movie starring Joan Crawford in 1951, but Emerson brought her own warmth and intelligence to the role. The story resonated with post-war audiences who were looking for stories about independent women balancing personal and professional lives. Regional critics praised her performance, pointing out how much depth she brought to the character in The Vinegar Tree. In this very different role, she showed her comedic and dramatic skills. The play was about family relationships and romantic problems, which helped her connect with the audience on a personal level. It was a reminder of her versatility, showing that she could handle both funny and serious material with equal skill. These regional performances were more than just work. They kept theater alive at a time when TV was taking people away from live performances. While many actors moved to TV, Emerson stayed dedicated to the stage. She believed in the power of theater and was willing to travel outside of major cities to bring high-quality productions to a wider audience. By the end of the 1950s, Emerson had proven herself as a performer who could succeed in any medium. Whether it was film, TV, or theater, she wasn't just a Hollywood actress who had dabbled in other types of acting. Broadway actress Bette Davis had shown her talent many times, while Hollywood star Faye Emerson was on the rise. They met at a party in 1943. Elliott Roosevelt was the son of President Franklin D. Roosevelt and a colonel in the U.S. Air Force, married to his second wife Ruth Goen. It wasn't by chance Howard Hughes, an aviation tycoon and film producer, set them up. While the world was at war, Hughes knew how to bring together powerful and famous people. Even though Elliott was married, there was an undeniable spark between them, and their relationship quickly became one of the most talked about of the time. A little over a year later, on December 3, 1944, Faye and Elliot got married at the Yavapai observation station with a view of the Grand Canyon. It was a dramatic setting fit for a Hollywood actress, as she was in the middle of filming Hotel Berlin, and the timing made the whole thing feel like something out of a movie. Howard Hughes once again played a big part by paying for the wedding and even providing planes to make it possible. Elliot was 34 years old, and Faye was 27. This was Elliot's third marriage, and Faye's second. Just days after their wedding, Elliot left for Europe to continue his military service. He named his reconnaissance aircraft My Faye in honor of her, but by the time he got back, the distance between them was already growing. They lived with Eleanor Roosevelt for a while at Hyde Park. It was a change from the glamour of Hollywood to the strict rules of politics. Faye quickly adjusted to the world of politics and got along well with Eleanor, who was still First Lady. However, even though she tried to take on the Roosevelt name, she wasn't someone who could just fade into the background. She was independent, ambitious, and set on continuing her acting career. Being a Roosevelt daughter-in-law came with expectations, and Faye wasn't willing to give up who she was to meet them. This growing gap between her and Elliot became impossible to ignore. By 1947, their marriage was falling apart because Elliot was cheating on Faye. And she wouldn't give up her career to become the devoted political wife that everyone expected her to be. They fought more often, and the emotional distance grew. What had once been an exciting and glamorous relationship was now strained by personal and professional problems. The Roosevelt family didn't like how Faye carried herself, and she wasn't going to change to make them happier. On Christmas Day 1948, the weight of it all hit her. When things got too much for Faye, she cut her wrists with a knife and tried to kill herself. She was rushed to Vassar Brothers Hospital in Pipey, where she was treated and released 2 days later. She and Elliot both said it was an accident, but their friends and family knew the truth. Their marriage had reached its breaking point. What had begun as a quick romance had turned into something painful and unrecognizable. They got a divorce on January 17, 1950. In Cuernavaca, Mexico, Elliot quickly moved on, marrying a fourth time. It was a passionate, scandalous, and heartbreaking time for them together. But in the end, they were better off apart than together. Faye Emerson's life was anything but quiet. By the time she got married for the third and final time, she was already one of TV's biggest stars, and was known as the First Lady of Television. She was a familiar face on talk shows and game shows throughout the 1950s. On December 12, 1950, she married Lyle Skitch Henderson. Born in Cuernavaca, Mexico, was a famous orchestra leader and TV band leader, who later became famous as the band leader for The Tonight Show. Their wedding was a big deal that drew attention from both Hollywood and the music industry. As a couple, they didn't just share a personal life, they also worked together on TV from 1953 to 1954 as co-hosts of Faye and Skitch, short musical show on BNKS that ran for 15 minutes each episode and showed how well they got along. Their work together made them famous, but it also put a lot of pressure on their marriage. They were seen as a glamorous and successful couple, but things were not as perfect as they seemed behind the scenes. They were married for 7 years, but got a divorce in January 1957. The divorce was not easy. There were rumors that Henderson had been cheating on his wife, and some sources said he was seeing teenage girls. These rumors were never confirmed, but they made things more tense. The divorce was finalized in Acapulco, Mexico. By that time, Emerson's career had already begun to decline, and the end of her marriage seemed to mark the start of a new era. She quit Hollywood and spent a lot of time traveling, moving further away from the entertainment world that had made her famous before she married Henderson. Emerson was no stranger to controversy. In 1950, she wore a low-cut dress that slipped during a live broadcast of The Faye Emerson Show. She briefly showed her chest on national TV. This happened decades before. Similar things happened all the time, and at the time it was a national scandal. Some people thought she was trying to get attention on purpose, while others thought it was an accident. Either way, it was one of the first times a wardrobe malfunction happened on TV. Her fashion choices had always been daring, often going beyond what was considered acceptable for women in public. She continued to wear elegant clothes, but revealing gowns that made some people admire her and others criticize her for going against what people thought she should do. Her willingness to break the rules made her a controversial figure. Some saw her as glamorous and sure of herself, while others said she was too provocative. The wardrobe malfunction added to the debate about decency on live TV, showing how powerful the medium had become in shaping public opinion. Outside of television, Emerson's ties to powerful people also got her name involved in unexpected scandals in 1947 during a Senate investigation into Howard Hughes's wartime government contracts. She became involved in the conversation in an unusual way. The investigation revealed that Hughes's press agent had spent $132 on nice stockings for Emerson. At first, this seemed like a small issue, but during Wee, nylons were a luxury due to strict rationing. Hughes's publicist, John W. Meyer, had arranged the purchase and had also spent thousands of dollars entertaining military officials and government figures, including Emerson's then-husband Elliott Roosevelt. While Emerson was never mentioned, she was accused of wrongdoing, and her name was now linked to a much bigger scandal. At the height of her career, Faye Emerson was one of TV's biggest stars, making up to $200 a year. But in 1963, after more than 20 years in the spotlight, she decided to leave. She wanted something different, something quieter. The constant media attention and pressure to always be in the public eye had worn her down. After her last TV appearance, she left Hollywood and moved to Europe and Switzerland. Was her first stop. Its peaceful landscapes and neutrality made it the perfect place to get away from the constant attention she had been getting in America. The press had been following her life for years, including her 3 high-profile marriages. Living abroad gave her the privacy she had been looking for. She still went back to the US sometimes, but only for business or the occasional social event. By 1975, she was ready for an even bigger change. She moved to Mallorca, Spain, settling in the small village of Didi, which was nothing like Hollywood. Cliffs above the Mediterranean, it was an artist's colony where writers, painters, and musicians who valued creativity over fame lived. Emerson liked the quiet life and kept to herself most of the time. She didn't do many interviews or public appearances, and people in the village knew who she was but didn't talk much about her past. She had been one of the most famous women on TV, but indeed, she was just another resident. During these years, she tried to write her memoirs, but they were never finished. Maybe she had trouble putting pen to paper. She put her story into words, or maybe she didn't like how they turned out. Whatever the reason, the book was never published. Aging wasn't easy for her either. She had been praised for her beauty and grace, but now she had to face the reality of getting older. She talked about aging ungrassifully, which was a way of saying it was hard to let go of the image the world had of her. But her past was impossible to erase. In the late 1940s and early 1950s, Faye Emerson had been a real pioneer. She was one of the first women to have her own talk show. The Faye Emerson Show ran from 1949 to 1951 on CBS and BNKS. At that time, only about 12 of American homes had a TV, but those that did watched her bring intelligence and sophistication into their living rooms. She was ahead of her time because, unlike most shows of the time, her show talked about serious issues like US-China relations, women's rights, and politics. These were conversations that didn't happen very often on TV, but she made them happen. She also paved the way for future talk show host Steve Allen, who later became famous for The Tonight Show. Started his own career by appearing on her show. Despite all of her achievements, the media often focused on her looks instead of her skills. She was known for her daring fashion choices, and sometimes newspapers cared more about her low-cut gowns than the depth of her discussions. It was a frustrating reality that she dealt with grace, even though future generations may not have known her name. Without her, people like Oprah Winfrey and Ellen DeGeneres might not have gone down the same path. Faye Emerson died on March 9, 1983. At the age of 65, she had stomach cancer and had lived in D for almost 20 years, in a modernized stone farmhouse surrounded by artists and writers who had become her community. She had left Hollywood behind, but no one had forgotten about her. News of her death was in major publications, but it didn't get the attention one might expect for someone her age. Someone once called her the first lady of television. By that time, TV had changed and new stars had taken over. But the foundation she laid stayed. She showed that TV could be more than just entertainment. It could be smart, interesting, and thought-provoking. Even in her later years, when she wasn't in the spotlight, she was still a part of that legacy.